Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Growth Class. I'm your host, Phil Masiello. And when we talk about scaling a business, we often focus on a lot of tech, digital products, consumer products, e-commerce. But today we're looking at a brand that's mastered the art of physical experience. So joining us is Brandon from Providence Diamond, a premier name in high-end jewelry in Rhode Island. For decades, they've managed to do something incredibly difficult, stay relevant across generations while maintaining an uncompromising standard of luxury. So we're going to dive into how you build that legacy brand, how the white glove approach to customer growth, and what the future of retail looks like in the digital world as well as the physical world. So Brandon, excuse me, thank you for taking the time to come on the show, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. And you're right about the future of retail. It's changing dramatically.
Yeah, why don't you take us through? I know that you didn't start the business, but it's multi-generational, I think, at
Yeah,
this point, right?
that's
And
right.
take us through what it is that you guys do, how you do it, and what makes you different.
Sure. So the business was started in the 80s, just as a quick education of jewelry stores. And in the 80s, jewelry stores switched a little bit from being a traditional jewelry store into either doing jewelry or investing in brands. Our family store, went the way of the brands. And from that, the brands themselves have taught us a lot along the way about service, how to brand your own store, and how to stay relevant as trends change. And so, where we're at now is we've taken a small family business and brought it up to a larger family business that's pretty significant now. And it's due to the fact that we've invested into the community and into the training and the service structure of our business. No one in it's a retail store. No one works on commissions. So the incentive for them to do well is a different type of training.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah. Is that different than most jewelry stores? Are most jewelry
yeah.
stores commission
So
based?
I would say the higher end jewelry stores, the ones that are a little more elegant, that maybe have those brands, I'd say the majority of them are not commission based. The ones that aren't at that level generally tend to be, because that's what motivates the salespeople to sell. The brands end up bringing people into our store, which is 80% of retail, getting people into your door. And with the, and because they're coming in for the brands, it's a destination. We're assuming they're going to buy something. So our job is to make that experience great so they want to come back again. So it's a longer term approach than just getting the sale and transactional.
So, yeah, I always wondered, like, if what we find, we do a lot in e-commerce, we do a lot on Amazon, we do help a lot of omni-channel retailers with driving people into the store to buy their product. But I always wondered if there was a metric, and if you could figure out how many times a customer has to visit the store before they actually pull the trigger and make the purchase, right?
Yeah, that is so. In most, I think in most stores, it's like something like 2 or 3 times. For our store, we have different stores. So this is a very interesting question. I'll just explain why. In our store, we carry a brand. We carry Rolex. We're an official Rolex jeweler. And with the way this market is right now, people want to come in and buy, but they can't. So what do you do about that problem? In our bridal department, people want to come in, but most likely they're going to shop around because it's a very, very important decision for them. And then in fashion jewelry, if they want a brand like David Yurman, this is the only place to get it unless you go to Boston or online. So these are the different types of channels that we deal with. And so when asking how many times are they going to come in, most of the time when someone comes in, it's 1 or 2 times and they're buying something. That's most of the time. What we've trained people to do and where the future of retail is to create an experience that makes them want to come back, a feeling, a wow moment. And it's free to do in most cases. And it's up to the employee or the managers to really set that tone, and they get that direction from us, which is to make the experience unforgettable. And naturally, you will have people come back. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, what I guess when you have a store and it's so tightly run, you can create that connection with the customer so that they do want to come back. But you said something about Rolex. Why can't people buy them? They come to the store, you said, but they can't. They want to
Yeah.
buy, but they can't.
Yeah. So I don't want to say that they can't. It's just that the supply is outweighed by the demand. And so when we don't have enough products to meet the demand, which is extremely high, it's abnormally high. It's not as high as it probably should be. It's too high. But because of that, most of the people who are going to want to buy one have to wait for them. And it's not just a transaction. Again, it's not an ordering transactional process. We take it seriously. It's a lot of money. And we want the experience to match the product that they're getting. And so when someone comes in and we meet with them, we are learning about them. We're getting to know them, and we're making those extra efforts to make them feel special. And you'll see that even in the digital world, that happens. When you go on websites, they find out what you want. They target you with an ad. That's a way of kind of making you feel special, but we can do it in a physical form here.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, but that's the reason they can't do it is because of supply and demand. And it eventually comes, but some of the waits are into years.
And is that everywhere? Like every Rolex dealer? So if I
that's
go to
everywhere.
you and I say I want to buy a Rolex, you say I can't. There's nothing for another year. Can I drive to Boston and get one? New, not used. New.
Yeah. So this is a great question, and let me hit it with 2 points. This goes into kind of just the service and what we do. Someone comes in and says, "Hey, can I buy a Rolex?" I'm never going to say no. That why would you ever tell your customer no? So these are just sales. What I would say is it's going to take some time. And what I'm going to do is advocate for you and do my best to make sure you get it as fast as you can. Can you go to Boston? The same process will take place there. We receive probably around anywhere from 30 to 60 calls a day for the product. And I'm sure Boston receives more. So it's we don't have an idea of how many watches Rolex makes. Some people think it may be, a million, 1.5 million. Let's say it's 3 million, which it probably isn't. Think of how many people there are in the world, and that's how many they can make a year. And you can see that if there's an over demand, that's what causes the slowdown. Yeah.
At this point, I'm fascinated by the watch business because I see so much of it on social media. I see so many people talking about watches and all the different brands and I think I told you in one of our calls that there was a point in time about 20 years ago where I wanted to buy a Patek and I went to Philadelphia and I never pulled the trigger, but I wanted it. I love the simplicity. I can't remember the exact model, but it's just the most simple one with just a gold bezel. It's just beautiful to me. And I almost pulled it and pulled the trigger, but I never did. And I kick myself now because I look at how much they're worth.
How much is it now?
Oh my God. And I think to myself, are people buying watches to wear, or are they just buying them now to stick in the drawer and collect because they see these antique roadshows where you have the box and you have the original receipt and you have everything, and then all of a sudden it's worth $200,000?
Yeah. So I can touch on that a little bit. First of all, this store, Providence Diamond, was a diamond store. We sold diamonds and jewelry. We didn't really get into watches until the 90s. And that's when Rolex came on board. And even still up into 2000, into the 2000 teens, Rolex was really the only brand that was carried. And it was considered a jewelry brand. We're an official Rolex Jeweler. And now we have a full watch store, 3,000 square foot lounge, bar. And why is that? So I can touch just on what you said about that Antiques Roadshow. And what's really fascinating is, and I know that other companies like Rolex are doing research into this phenomenon because it is a phenomenon. And one of the things that has been found is that people stopped using their watches a lot when the iPhone came out. And when the iPhone came out, there was about a 7-year trend of people stopping watches. Then the Apple Watch came, and a lot of watch companies, not Rolex, but a lot of watch companies were scared. Is that going to take away more of our business? But no, it did the opposite. What happened was it trained people to wear something on their wrist again. And in doing so, people's trends usually ran around 7-8 years. And as this trend was slowly dissolving, an interesting thing happened where we were able to see things like that Antique Roadshow. virally because it's targeting us, because algorithms are targeting us, which didn't happen 10 years before that. We were able to see things like Paul Newman's Daytona sell for $18 million, which is unheard of. And these types of events, they call them black swan events or whatever you call them, catapulted the interest in watches, coupled with needing that wrist real estate. And what ended up happening is that we had a pandemic and people had extra money to spend, and they knew that those watches went up in value. And what would I want to spend my money in if I can't go on a vacation and can't buy a boat? And so it catapulted into a huge phenomenon of people loving watches, getting interested in them, and creating a whole culture. So that's where we are today, and that's why we built the second thing on. Yeah. So
Yeah, it is amazing that all of a sudden, all of these uh, startup watch brands became, popular around that same time, like Movement,
yeah,
MVMT, and Shinola, and
yes.
just there's another one here locally, in mid range. I mean, they're not building
Yeah, these are
Rolexes
boutique
and that.
brands.
Yeah,
Boutique brands are what came out of it. You can look at it like clothing or jewelry or any of that, where you see there's, think of cars even. You start out with the big three. Think of TV. Start out with the big three, and then it dissolves into boutiques, and that's where we are. And I think every business does that, and so we capitalized on that. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's funny. I was at an event last week, and in in it used to be, right, there's like basically six outcomes that people look for when they're buying a product. They're looking for some sort of an outcome, and if you're good at marketing, you're targeting that outcome. And obviously, Rolexes or Pateks or any of those high-end watches have been about status. Right? You wear a Rolex because it says, I had $15,000 that I could afford to spend on something, and I have it here, right? And then I started to see people that are collecting them, not necessarily wearing them everywhere. But I was at an
Right.
event about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and I saw this guy, and he's got a Rolex on his right arm, and he's got his Apple Watch on his left arm.
Yeah.
And I said, I said, I don't understand why you want to wear two watches. He's like, well, I need this one because it's getting all my stats, my
Right.
and I'm thinking, so you want everybody to know you can afford I didn't say this to him, but I'm thinking you want everybody to know you can afford the Rolex and you're successful, but you still want the stats coming out of, your Apple Watch, because that Rolex isn't going to come out with that type of watch. So I just think it's funny, the behavior, because I love watching consumers and I love watching and trying to understand their behavior and trying to figure out if that makes me a better marketer or not. But, I just love watching how people react to things, because
Yeah.
the Apple Watch is very specific. Like, I wear an Apple Watch and I do it because I need that information. Right. But
Yep.
I don't need it to tell time. I'm carrying around a phone that has the time on it. And, so anyway,
Correct. Rolex will be the first to tell you nobody needs their product.
yeah,
Nobody needs it. So if nobody needs your product, why would they buy it? And one of the things that you'll find with a lot of Rolex uh, owners, a lot of them, is that they're driven by achievement, and that's a symbol of their achievement. It's
yeah,
something they're proud of.
absolutely.
And I find that, I think in the 80s, long ago in the 80s, you saw Rolex as that status kind of symbol. That's what set that mark. But now it's something a little different. We find that people are really coming in when they're finding something in their life is important to celebrate. And we love being a part of that. That's, again, part of that experience where we understand how important that purchase is. It's not like buying a piece of clothing. It means something to them. And we take that seriously. And because of that, I think the respect is built for future relationship. Yeah.
I did see that in the late '80s. I remember when I, was in college, and I was seeing people that were, either working in the finance side of it or whatever, starting to buy Rolexes, obviously, as their primary watch, and they were obviously much more reasonably priced back then, but still. And you're 100% right. It was a symbol of achievement. It was a symbol of status. It said, I can afford to spend this. But then I started to see recently, like probably in the last 7 or 8 years, that a lot of guys are taking pride in finding these vintage
Yes.
Rolexes or Pateks or, all these other ones, the ones I can't pronounce, Audemars what I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see
Yeah.
these, you see everybody looking for these vintage ones to wear because that has become like they may buy a new Rolex or they may have other Rolexes at home that they're collecting, but they have these vintage ones that they like wearing on their wrist.
There's a couple reasons for that. One of them is a lot like cars. So I collect cars. How often can I show my car collection to you?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is I can carry 50,000 in my pocket and show it to you. 100,000, a million, whatever. The ability to show off again your achievements, your collections in a small area is great. The other reason is a little bit of status. Those vintage watches, because they're so rare, if I go to a party, chances are someone may have on a modern day Rolex that I'm wearing or a modern day Audemars Piguet or any of those. But the chances are they're not going to have that vintage one. And that's going to draw some attention. And it's going to show that you have an interest in something that other people are interested in.
Yeah.
So I find that a lot where people are buying those vintage, A, because they love it, they're collectors, or B, they want something no one else has.
Yeah,
And so,
exactly. They want something
yeah,
that nobody else has and
yeah,
and nobody else can get because it's limited. And yeah, I find it fascinating. I love watching consumers. I love their behavior. I love watching people and understanding sort of, what turns them on. But aside from the watch business or the watch side of it, is the jewelry business sort of growing, stagnant, hurting because of things in the economy, especially when it comes to diamonds? And then I have a second question after that
yeah, of
regarding
course.
specifically diamonds.
Yeah. So when in regards to jewelry, fashion jewelry, as far as the brands, David Yurman, if you look at Chanel, Cartier, things like that, those are all up. The higher brands are up. We found that stores that don't have the brands or maybe a little second tier lower than us have felt a little bit of a crunch. I think that's due to gold prices. We had in many of our vendors, we had almost three increases last year, not only for gold, but tariffs. So both of those things affected. But in our business, for our clientele, the level that we're at, we didn't see as much of a slowdown. Where we are seeing a little bit of a slowdown is in the bridal business. So when you want to talk about diamonds, we do see we see people waiting to get married a little bit more. We see people not getting married. If you see, certain, let's say, same-sex marriages or same-sex couples, they may wait a little bit longer than some others to get married. Younger people who may have been getting married in the 20s are getting married in their 30s. So we're seeing that bridal business, not necessarily for us like slow down, but we see it. We see it a little bit. It's not slow to hurt, but we see it, and we're hearing that as well. What's your question on diamonds?
Well,
Lab grown?
my no,
Yeah,
this whole trend towards what do you call lab
yeah,
created diamonds,
yeah.
and because I grew up in New York and we were always taught that if you're gonna get engaged, if you're gonna, do anything with a diamond, you go down to the diamond district, you find the diamond, you pick out the diamond first, then you worry about the setting, right? You want to get the best quality diamond that you could possibly get, and then you worry about the setting. So you don't necessarily buy a finished ring, you're sort of constructing it, right?
Yeah.
And then but there's this whole trend now towards lab created diamonds. And to me, I don't know, does it hold the value the same as a regular diamond? Is it the same type of quality? Do people view it the same?
Yeah. So what what happens with lab grown diamonds is that it's the same process that a diamond would go through, except in 4 weeks instead of 4 million years. And when it comes out, it is a diamond. It's chemically a diamond. There's attributes to it that are minerals, I believe, that are in it that can be tested to tell that it is a lab grown diamond. But why would someone buy that? Um, there's a lot of reasons. that people would buy the lab grown diamonds, and we see a huge increase in it. So we don't advertise it, but we have them here when people are asking for alternatives. When something's 10,000 and they can only spend 5, maybe that's a good alternative if they need a certain size. Certain social circles require um, conformity amongst their friends. And if they can't afford to conform, then maybe that's a good suggestion. I don't know. I've seen just in the past 6 months, we've seen an uptick in natural diamonds come back. It reminds me again of the 80s, 90s when people would go to Canal Street in New York and get Louis Vuitton bags that were fake bags. There was something cool about that. I got a fake Louis Vuitton bag. That eventually runs its course, and now people ask, is that real or fake? And as that social trend happens, people shift more towards real because they don't want to answer that question. I don't know if diamonds will do the same thing. They might, but I think there's a use for them. If you're 16 and want to get diamond studs, maybe you get lab growns, and by the time you're 21, I can get you new ones, since showing me that you've kept them. That's a great use, I think. Someone who wants to put money on a house as opposed to buying a diamond ring, but needs to have that. I think it's good use. Maybe after 5 years, you say, let's get a real one, after you've established yourself. There's a lot of uses. Again, when we're here talking to clients, we're giving them advice. We're learning about them and saying, as a friend, this is what I would do. And we don't care about what they buy. We care about, trusting us.
Care about whether or not they're happy with the service that they got and whether or not they're
That's
going to
it.
come back.
Like the restaurant, right? You'll go back if the food's bad, but if the service isn't good, you're not going to go.
Yeah.
So,
Well, in your business, you're trying to create that long-term customer, because if you're going to buy a piece of jewelry once, you're going to come back. Nobody buys one piece of jewelry in their life. If I'm going to buy something for my wife, I'm going to go and buy it and come back maybe every, Christmas, every birthday, every Mother's Day, whatever it is. So yeah, you want that retention. I'll be honest, I've tried buying things online from places like Blue Nile and things like that, and jewelry, and I have never been 100% satisfied. I've always sent it back, and then I've always gone to there's a local jewelry store that we go to, that
good.
because I think you need to have. I think it's really difficult, in my opinion, and I can sell anything online, but in my opinion, it's difficult to sell really high-end jewelry, diamonds and white gold and yellow gold, etc., because I think you have to touch it, feel it, look at it. Obviously a picture of an earring always looks bigger than the ones you're going to get in. And so I think in the jewelry business, e-commerce look at Blue Nile does a phenomenal job, but I think they have a very specific audience for that, not somebody who's really looking for high quality, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, it's true. We have that in like every industry, every product. The people who are buying from us want quality, and they want to have trust in what they're buying. I think a schema of jewelry stores is, am I getting ripped off? Like in the 80s, 90s, like, am I paying the right price? Am I doing this? And I think that's another reason people want to go in there, because now you're doing it online and you're like, it's even more of a question. So I think it's like 92% of jewelry sales are still done in store. And I think I really believe it's because it's an emotional purchase more than anything else. It's emotional, and you can't connect that emotion with the screen. And if you do, you're like what you said, you're going to be unhappy somehow. And I don't know if you can quantify that, but I think it's because of the emotional disconnect that happens with that purchase. So
yeah, that's true. I think that has a lot to do with it. I also think that the online jewelry stores affect the mall jewelry stores more so than the independent the independent high service.
Yeah.
A
lot of those people shopping there, I think, are buying, I think, a little bit more necessity. Like, I got to get this for the holiday, which we have that too. But I think it's more of that necessity as opposed to caring about the quality of what they're getting. And that's neither here nor there. That's fine. Everyone has different they may have a quality in something else, but that's not important to them
Yeah.
in that piece. And
Yeah, it's
that's, yeah,
yeah. That industry is fascinating to me. I mean,
it
I
is.
don't do we don't do a lot in the jewelry industry, but it's always been fascinating, even as a consumer, right? Because
Yeah.
I obviously I have a wife, I have 4 daughters, and so, I've spent my life in jewelry stores. So
And then you will think about that. Think about how many years jewelry's been, thousands of years. Egypt, it's jewelry's always been a part of humans' lives for some reason. Most jewelry stores, most are family owned, most are family businesses. So this is a family business, and you'll find that most jewelers, the people making the jewelry, are family businesses. So there's something about that.
yeah, absolutely. That's a whole different segment is,
Yeah,
when you can get something custom made. There was a person outside of Philadelphia. I can't remember her name, but she dealt strictly in platinum, and she had a whole showroom just making jewelry, and it becomes unique. And, when you buy clothing, right? Women buy clothing, men buy clothing, and that clothing has a lifespan and it gets pushed away, right? Whether you donate it or whether you throw it away or whatever it is. But jewelry, you've got pieces of jewelry. My wife has pieces of jewelry that her grandmother had or her great
yeah,
grandmother had that were passed down. And she's got jewelry that she's given to the girls. And it becomes this thing where I don't know people who go, without necessity to go and sell their jewelry. They just
right.
keep it and they just keep passing it on. So,
Yeah, it's the best recycling.
yeah, yeah. Well, we're about out of time. I appreciate you coming on. I think it's been a really good explanation of how to treat customers like almost like lifelong partners rather than just
That's it.
transactions. Because I think too many times we're in a world of transactions and we sort of lose sight of the fact that we're talking to people, we're dealing with people, we're selling to people. So I really appreciate how you run your business and how you deal with customers. And for
That's
those
great.
listening,
Thank you.
remember, growth isn't just about getting bigger. It's about getting better at the things that can't be automated or that you don't, that you need a personal touch for. So,
Yeah.
learn more about Brandon and the team. Check out Providence Diamond. You could look at them online. You can go and
Yeah.
visit them in person if you're in the Northeast, see what
Yeah.
great retail looks like. And again,
You
thanks
go on
for taking the time to come on.
our Instagram site's great. It's a good one to look at. Just it's good in the jewelry industry. We're looked at for it, so it's a nice one.
What's the name of what's the handle on the
It's
Instagram account?
it's I think it's just Providence Diamond or
Providence
Prov
Diamond.
Diamonds. Yeah, and yeah, if you look it up, but we in the jewelry industry because it is families, it's a little bit slower to come to market. We've we've done really well with that, and we get some nice accolades. My wife actually does all of that, and so again,
Great.
family business, and she's buying as well, and a lot of roles. But that one specifically, we're very proud of. So appreciate being on.
We'll put the link to your website. We'll put the link to the Instagram account in the description so everybody can go and take a look and see for yourself. Thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.